Welcome to Coinology, the podcast. Hey, and welcome to another episode of Coinology. We're here at season 5, and I'm super excited to have our next guest here with us. We have none other than Miss Octavia Conner, Say Yes to Profits. Welcome into the studio.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Okay, now I should have known you were going to have on green today.
Yes.
Okay. So green and gold are your colors, right?
Yes.
So I guess the obvious would be green for money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So where did the gold come from?
Wealth.
Okay.
Symbol of wealth, a symbol of riches, and honestly, I just like the way it looks.
Okay. So Octavia, who are you?
Octavia, who am I? I am a wife, a mother of 4. I am just someone that wants to change the legacy of my family and be one of the people that takes them to a whole nother level.
But what's your title? What's your career title?
Oh, my career title?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm a virtual CFO, and I am the CEO of Say Yes to Profits.
Okay. So Say Yes to Profits and Virtual CFO. So most people may not be familiar with what a virtual CFO is. Can you kind of share a little bit about what that is?
Right. So most people get virtual CFO accounting professionals confused. Each role is an accountant. However, I'm more of the strategist. So I will help you take your numbers, take your information, and develop the tax and financial strategy so that you're able to say yes to profits.
And so if somebody were in school, what would they have to major in order to become a virtual CFO?
Honestly, you just need to be a really good accountant because you need to be able to understand numbers and you need to be able to see behind the numbers and understand what the numbers are trying to demonstrate and then use that information to create a forward-focused strategy for whomever you're working with.
So, but in order to be a virtual CFO, do you have to obtain a degree to do that?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So I always assumed to be a CFO, you needed to at least have a bachelor's degree in finance or accounting, and that's not true.
No, it is not required. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. Do I have it? Absolutely. But it's not required.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back a little bit. Octavia, where are you from?
Atlanta.
Okay, born and raised in Atlanta. Okay. All right. Did you come from a 2-parent household?
So, no, my mom died when I was 5. My dad was a truck driver, so you know how that is. My grandmother raised my sisters and I.
Okay. So your grandmother raised, and how many sisters?
On my mother's side, between my mother and my father, it is 3 girls total. Now, my daddy, he has other kids, and I think it's like maybe 7 of us total. But within my household, my 2 older sisters, myself, and my grandmother.
Okay. So, would you say that you were raised in a traditional household, or was it, different than your friends and those around you?
I think it depends on what you define traditional, because while my mother was gone and my father was barely there, I didn't have a lack of love and support, and, honestly, I was kind of spoiled, so anything I wanted, I got. So I think it depends on the traditional sense. Is it a mother and father? No. But my grandmother, she was amazing.
So you always felt protected and safe.
Absolutely. And then I'm the youngest of my 2 older sisters. So that helped and hurt me growing up. So, yeah.
So why do you say it hurt you?
Because as I became an adult, I had to fend for myself, because it was never a time where if anything happened, my sisters didn't step in. Because of the way my mom passed, I was 5 years old, so everyone was super protective of me. And so I never had to, struggle or hustle or, it was just somebody always there. And so as I became a woman, they're living their lives. Now I have to, be there for myself and build my confidence and speak up for myself and all of those things were challenging because I never had to do them before. Does that make sense?
It does. Makes a lot of sense. So when you said how your mother passed, do you mind sharing how she passed?
Sharing. She had a brain aneurysm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so do you remember much about your mother?
I have no memories.
None whatsoever. But your sisters, they do?
Yes.
So do they try to share some of those memories?
Oh, yes. They try to share. And then my family is originally from Perry, Georgia, which is the country. And so according to everyone, every time I go there, they call me by my mother's name. They say I look just like her. And they'll share different stories, but I don't have any memories. I have this dream, but I don't quite know if it's true. But according to my grandmother, it is. But it's one of those things where you say it's true, but it's just kind of like a figment of my imagination. Yeah.
Well, is it a dream that brings you, I guess, do you feel safe when you that dream, or?
I don't feel anything. Honestly, it's just, it's almost like a video. We were in our family home down there, and she had me on her hips, and we were walking into the bathroom, and I think we were about to take a bath, or she was about to put me in the tub. But that's it.
And do you remember when she was no longer here? Do you remember that? So technically, and you were 5 when she passed, so you don't even remember that
I
whole.
have no memories of it.
Wow.
I was told that's because maybe I try to suppress it so it doesn't hurt me, or I don't know. I have no memories. The very first memory I have is at my grandmother's house, sitting next to her. And I'm like, hey, Mom, because I call her Mom because that's the only mom that I remember. That's the very first memory of me being a kid that I have.
What's funny is I can't even think of what my first memory of being a child. But if I think back to kindergarten, can I even remember that? So that's probably, if you try to force yourself to go back. I do remember being extremely young, probably maybe 3 or 4, and my father used to carry me on his back every single night. So we had a ritual where he was like a horse, and every single night he would take me on a ride throughout the house on his back. And I was probably but I was like, my father is my pride and joy. So that's what I remember. But that's it. I can't remember much. But for some reason, being 3 years old and riding on my father's back every single night before I went to bed is something I remember. So I guess there's certain things you'll remember. Why I remember that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Either.
So you went off to college, okay, and where did you go to school?
Strayer University.
Okay, and so when you entered, did you know that you always had a love for money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've always had a love for money. I remember being in school, and I had a best friend, and her and I would compete for who received the highest grade on each assignment, and that just happens to be in our math class. But when I started in Strayer, I started in accounting, but I have a love for computers and technology, so at some point I switched. But then ultimately I went back to accounting again.
Okay. So you have a little background in both the technology, and that kind of shows, I think, because you do really well with social media.
Yes, I like it.
So,
I think if I didn't have the accounting firm, I would probably do like social media or something like that.
So you graduate from college. Okay. At that time, were you already in a relationship with your husband at that moment, or how did this relationship come about?
So if we take it back a step, I had my son in high school.
Okay, let's take it way back then. So you ended up being a teenage mother. All right. So as a teenage mom, spoiled Octavia, grandma, and everybody, you the apple of everybody's eye. How did you come home and tell them, hey, y'all, I'm pregnant?
So I didn't. I've always been small until lately. But I was able to hide my pregnancy up until I was like 6 months.
Wait a minute. So you were pregnant.
And I was still cheering.
You were on the cheering team. Nobody knew.
Nobody knew but my best friend.
The coach
and
didn't
the father.
And the father, right?
Yes, the coach knew. She knew.
She knew, but she let you continue to cheer? So what was her feedback? What was her advice to you? Was she like, Octavia, you need to tell your grandmother? What was her advice?
So, yes and no. At that time, we were one of the top cheerleading teams in Georgia. and I was one of the flyers, the people that's on the top of the pyramid and getting thrown in the air and everything. And so when we finally revealed it to the coach, we had like one or two more competitions. And she was just like, "What are you going to do?" And I was like, "I'm going to cheer." And believe it or not, they threw me in the air. We did the competition, everything was fine. And then finally, once that was over, then my grandmother, I guess she sent something, and so she was like, "We're going to the doctor," and I'm like, "Okay." So we go to the doctor, and she tells the doctor that she wants to put me on birth control. By then, they had done the test and everything, and the doctor said she doesn't need birth control. She's already pregnant. Well, I already knew that. And so, yeah.
You think the coach may have told grandma?
It's possible because my grandmother was always at every school, high school, middle school. She was always there. So
I can see
it's
her.
Possible.
I think as a responsible adult, she probably did tell your grandmother. But I also think she still allowed them to throw you up in the air knowing you were pregnant for a cheering competition. So it makes me wonder about her a little bit. As now you look back on it, what would you have done?
Now that I look back on it, that was the absolute wrong thing to do. And I'm grateful that my son was A-okay. But yeah, that was nothing I should have been doing.
Right. So, okay, so the doctor comes in and tells grandma this. What was grandma's reaction?
She was upset. She asked the normal questions: when, where, what, how. She knew how, but like where and all that stuff. But the funny thing is, my grandfather told everybody in the family, "Don't bother me. Leave me alone. Everybody have made mistakes. Don't say anything to me," and nobody bothered me.
Really? So were you the only daughter or granddaughter through the family who had a teenage pregnancy?
Yes.
Okay. So, and how old were you again?
17.
Okay. So your grandfather was very protective of you. Okay. All right. And so you have your baby your senior year?
Yes. So I had my baby the summer before senior year.
Okay.
So 16, 17, I can't quite remember, but it was the summer before senior year. I came back senior year just like everyone else, but a lot of people, not my family, was saying, "Oh, you're not gonna graduate, or you're gonna drop out, or this." And so I made it my mission to not only graduate but also be one of the top 5% in my class, to prove to those that because I had a child, the world was going to cave in, that wasn't going to be the case.
How did your friends' parents react to the news of you were they like, "Keep my child away"? How did they respond?
No.
So they were supportive?
Because it was only a group of us, like 3 ladies. We were all really close-knit as best friends. And they threw the baby shower, kind of got mad when someone else wanted to throw the baby shower. Nobody, to my knowledge, said anything to me or said anything to them in a negative way. It was the teachers and the other people in the school that had so much to say.
Did they actually say it to you, or did you hear about it from?
No, they said it to some of our friends. They said it to them, and then they, high school had words, and then when I found out what were y'all beefing about, it was me.
Yeah. So how did that make you feel, Octavia?
I didn't care. I didn't care. It was my life, and I knew that no matter what, I was not going to not graduate high school. Like that wasn't a part of the plan. It happened.
Did you ever think about an abortion?
Yes.
So why did you choose not to have an abortion?
Because the day that we actually went to the abortion clinic, I was like, I can't do this. I can't see myself getting an abortion. And we left. But we went. We made the appointment and everything.
And you walked into the clinic? And it was before the doctor came out or after you?
Yeah, it was once you walked in. At that time, you walk into the clinic, they give you all this paperwork on all of these things about having an abortion and all this stuff. And I was just sitting there because that never came to mind of getting an abortion. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And my grandmother was like, you don't want to do it? I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it.
Wait a minute. So grandma was there. You were going to have an abortion after 6 months?
I was going to try.
Oh, well, I don't think they would have allowed you to do that anyway.
They didn't say anything. They were talking to me as if it was okay. Now, this was before we went to the back of the abortion clinic for them to do everything that they were going to do.
Oh, because I don't think it's 6 months. People can actually have a baby at 6 months. Now, the baby would have extreme, issues, but I don't know about that, Octavia, because if at that point, 6 months.
Yeah. But keep in mind, I wasn't showing. So this was after we went to the doctor. The doctor says she's already pregnant. It was like, what are you gonna do? Then I think like a day or two later, maybe like a week or so, we went to the clinic as well. The records from the doctor's office, it didn't transfer to the clinic. We went to an abortion clinic. So before we could even get in the back for them to do all the tests and everything, that's when we arrived at the front and they gave us the paperwork, and I sat there for a minute and I was like, I don't want to do this. So I think maybe by the time I got back there, they would have said
whatever. By the time you filled out that paperwork and that woman in that front would have seen that you were beyond 12 weeks,
right,
they would have probably said, ma'am, we can't help you.
I know that now.
Yeah.
But at the time it was kind of like weighing your options, but I just knew that wasn't for me. Like whatever I have to go through, I did it. I just got to figure it out.
You just got to deal with it. Got to deal with it. Okay, so you become a teenage mom, but you are still determined to go to Strayer.
Yes.
So during the time of going to college, you are also raising your son.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you and your son's father stay together during this time?
No.
Okay. And how did you process that?
Well, so unfortunately, his dad is not the greatest. And so when it was one of those situations where in order to take care of your child, you feel you need to be with me. But I ended up getting to the point where I knew that wasn't for me, just based on the lifestyle he was living. Mm-hmm. His lifestyle was one that was filled with drugs and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want to really raise my child around that. And so I made the decision that I was done. And I left his house one day. This was after having the baby. I left his house one day and I never went back. And so for some time, I was trying to get him to still maintain the relationship with your child. This is your child, not with me. He didn't want to do that. And after a while, I was just like, forget it. And then shortly after that, my son was turning 2. I met my husband. And he's taken on that role ever since then.
So what's the name of this guy? You guys know this basketball player that just recently paid his the new baby mom, Anthony. What's his last name, guys? Edwards. Okay. So what I saw, and from an accounting perspective, you can kind of help me figure this out. So this young man is from Georgia, I believe, from what I'm hearing, and supposedly this young lady became pregnant by him. And he advised that he did not want to have the child. And she had the baby anyway. And so from my understanding, he ended up writing a check out for $1,088 or something of that magnitude to go ahead and pay for the child support for the next 18 years. Yep. So I did the math, okay, So you break it down. If you break down $1,088, I believe that was the amount, over 18 years, and monthly, you're right, or roughly around $4,500 a month that this mother is going to make off of this child. I don't think that's what she was banking on.
I don't either.
I think, because, of course, his star power, you guys tell me, is he supposed to be a really big deal?
Yes.
So the likelihood of his value is probably going to go through the roof. What do you think about that from an accounting perspective? Do you think that was a smart idea on his behalf, smart idea on hers? What are your thoughts on it? And then being the fact that you were a single mom yourself and teenage mom, what are your thoughts about the whole situation?
Well, I think if you make the baby, you should take care of the baby.
Well, if he paid $1,088,
but that's still not taking care of it. That's financial support. What about being there for the baby each and every day? I don't know the gender, but whether a boy or a girl, they need their father. So I definitely think that's a responsibility that will be missed. As far as the financial support, I think she wasn't banking on that because when you think about it, it's not a lot of money. And so that may not have been the outcome that she wanted. So I don't think, honestly, anyone won in this situation.
And the one I think that lost the most was the baby. Is the baby. But if a man tells you, I do not want to be a father, do you believe that a woman is obligated to
No.
in the pregnancy at that point?
No.
Right.
No.
And
because they knew what they were doing and what the end results could be. And so my grandmother always told me, when you have a baby as a woman, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but this is how I was raised, it is your responsibility. You cannot make that man do anything. So if you lay down and you make that baby, you better make sure you can take care of that baby.
My father told me the same thing. My father said, at the end of the day, you are always going to be the mother of that child, and you're going to have to make sure that your children have what they have to have for their, regardless, husband or not. And so I agree. I think women, but at the same token, I think, what does that leave, or what message does that give to that child that I was only worth $1,088,000? And when I say only, because by the time this child gets 15, 18 years old, $1 million will probably be like $20,000 today.
Right.
And that's going to sting.
Yes, I think it's going to sting as far as the child's self-worth. You know, they may suffer from maybe a lack of confidence, or feeling as if no one wants them because of that particular situation.
But I think this situation may end up making some other people think twice before, if it was applied. We have no idea, because to me, at the end of the day, it was two people who decided to engage in sexual relations. So whatever comes out on the other side of that, the two people have to deal with it.
Right.
Okay. All right. So you become a single mom. At 2 years old, you meet your now to be husband.
Yes.
Okay. Was that like a love affair, or how was that?
Funny story. We met at the club, and he was coming off a deployment, and I was at a point in my life where I really didn't want a relationship. I had just left the father of my son. And we just started to hang out, and it kind of just went from there.
It went from there.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you guys been married now?
We've been married for 18 years.
18. Okay. 18 years. So that, and that's hanging in there, because they, usually they say 7 to 8 years is that most difficult period of time, and you guys are still hanging in there. All right. So you become now a mom and a wife. Straight, did you go straight through it? Did you graduate within 4 years? How did that go?
No. So I started and I stopped and I started and I stopped, and for several years, that's pretty much what I did.
Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually I just kind of let me get this done.
So how long would you say it took you to finish?
Maybe about 7 or 8 years.
Because life happens, right? The key thing is just the consistency to keep going. Keep going. So you graduate, and what's your first job out of school?
I became a bookkeeper for an insurance company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so how long were you working in corporate America before you decided to take a leap?
10 years.
10 years. Okay. And what was that moment that made you say, I am ready for entrepreneurship?
So I had climbed the corporate ladder from a bookkeeper to data entry clerk. From data entry bookkeeper to an accounting manager to the CFO of a pharmaceutical company. And honestly, I just got to the point where I didn't want to be there. So in corporate, there's a lot of politics that take place, in my experience. And a lot of the companies that I work for, you didn't see a lot of individuals that look like me. But I just so happened to be good at my job. And so there was a lot of competition from those in the same accounting department. However, they would promote me over and over and over again. But the backlash from my coworkers was a lot. And so keep in mind, growing up, I've never had to deal with confrontation and all of that. So I sometimes still now, but I'm a little better, but I kind of stray away from confrontation. So the environment became uncomfortable, even though I was making good money. And at that time, I said, there's something better for me. Just so happened, my sister was expanding her childcare center, and she needed a bookkeeper. And so I started helping her, and then I started to go to events, and yeah, I felt like that was when I was bit by the entrepreneur bug. And I was like, well, if I can do this for my sister, and then I started to sign other clients like Chamber of Commerce and all these other clients. I was like, I could do this for myself.
And is your sister still a client?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so your first client is still a client,
Yes.
which is very, very good. All right, and so I know one of your stories that you tell a lot is about the most difficult time within your life. Let's outline that. The broke, busted, and disgusted, right? What does that look like, Octavia? What happened?
So leaving corporate, I had the cushy corporate job. And before I left corporate, we had just built our custom home from the ground up, and, bought the cars and quote unquote living the lifestyle. But again, I knew it wasn't for me. And so I left corporate America thinking that because I helped this pharmaceutical company make multi-million dollars, that I can definitely do it for myself in no time. That's what I was thinking. And once I left, that's when I call it the broke, busted, disgusted, because within like 14 months of leaving corporate America, I was broke. And when I say broke, I literally had a negative $152 in my bank account. I tell this story all the time. We were 1 month away from foreclosure, and we were hiding our cars in the garage. And I couldn't understand why I was there, but I get it now. But at that time, I didn't understand it.
Why were you there?
Because I didn't have the CEO mindset. I didn't have to understand how to run and operate a business. I knew the numbers. But as a CEO, you have to constantly get out there and find new clients. You have to manage your money, not just let it come in. You have to manage your own money. You have to make the hard decisions, and you have to be confident and strong enough to do that, right? It's a different mindset. And I didn't have that mindset when I first started. So I fell flat on my face.
I think the other part is many people have this illusion that entrepreneurship is less hours, more time on the beach. You do what you want to do, and you're running through with your bikinis on, right? Not knowing that entrepreneurship is 80 to 100 hours per week versus the 40. You very rarely ever have a vacation. I know whenever I've ever traveled, it could look like vacation online, but best believe since I've become an entrepreneur, I have never been able to turn off. I've never been able to turn my phone off, my email off, or anything, right? So even if I can be on the beach and right beside me is my phone.
Absolutely.
One, because I won't even be able to enjoy myself if I don't have it there, to know that everything is okay, because I'll constantly be concerned. But I think the other thing is people have a false perception of what it really requires to run a business, right? And client acquisition.
Right.
Because it's one thing to be it's very difficult to attract clients, but once you get those clients, can you maintain those clients? And then can you maintain the income and the influx of income that has to come to cover the overhead, right? So it's a lot of challenges in that space. So that whole CEO mentality is very, very, very important.
Absolutely.
I tell people this all the time. You may be really good at a craft,
Right.
but running a company,
Totally
you
different.
have to be able to be really good at running a company. Absolutely. And it's difficult.
And I had to learn that the hard way.
I think social media has a romanticizing behavior with that. It makes people believe that it is oh so easy and that is the best thing in the world. And for many people, it could be the death of them.
Right.
Because, increase of high blood pressure, stress, depression. It can. So that's the part of entrepreneurship that many people don't talk about.
Right.
Right. So you got all the way down to a negative $152. What happened?
That was the account that I would look at. I wouldn't even look at the other accounts. And I got to the point where we could barely feed our kids. And so if it wasn't for my grandmother, many a nights, we probably wouldn't eaten. And I said, I can't live like this. It's not fair to them for us to live like this. At the time, my husband was struggling with his job as well. And we had just got back together too. We separated for a little bit. So I made the only decision I knew to make. I knew as an accountant with my experience and educational background, I can always go and get an accounting job. So I got another accounting job, but I was at least smart in that way. I worked that job part-time and I rebuilt my business part-time as well. And I took it slow. I did a lot of mindset work. I studied successful entrepreneurs. I created a strategy, a plan, a blueprint for me to follow so that I can get to a point where money is never a problem again. And so one of my goals was to have one bank account that had at least $100,000 in that account before I ever left corporate again. And I felt like once I achieve that, then I'll be okay when I do leave corporate again, as I build the business. And so I was able to achieve that. And I realized this is a strategy. This is where the CFO part came from, because I didn't know anything about a CFO, but I knew it was more than bookkeeping. And so once I was able to do that, I left corporate a second time as a multi-six-figure business owner. That was back in 2016. You know, we've doubled or tripled every single year since then. And even when we had challenging times, we always bounce back. And I said, this is what I want to teach others. And so I rebranded to Say Yes to Profit.
So what has been the most difficult time that you've had while being an entrepreneur?
Managing a team.
Yeah. Most entrepreneurs I talk to, they say the most difficult part of it all is human resources.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think specifically for you, because you don't like confrontation. You just, you said that. And being able to manage a team and dealing with personality types, you have to be able to confront those things.
Yes.
So, but what part of team management has been your difficult part?
Confrontation.
Confrontation.
So one of the mistakes I made with hiring a team that I have learned from is I allowed the personal to intermingle with the business. What do I mean? When I brought my team members on, if we would have events at my house for personal, I would invite them. You know, we would have those conversations on what's going on in your life. And it was nothing wrong with that. But I allowed the lines to be blurred. So then when it was time to get back to business and correct you for your mistakes or something like that, I could see where it was, we're friends or something, and I had to realize that was my mistake. And I'm so grateful for my husband, because while I avoid confrontation, he hit it head on. And so when I would talk to him about things, or my oldest sister, they would help me handle certain things, but it also shined a light on what I did wrong.
So when you say helped you handle, was your husband and your sister coming to the business?
No. They would, like, if something happened, right, and I talk it over. It's like you and I talking, and I talk it over, and then you tell me, oh, well, maybe this was the best way to handle it. I always go back. I overanalyze everything. So I always go back. I always think about it. And if I agree with it, I move forward in that direction.
So what you found is that there became a lack of respect because of the familiarity.
Absolutely.
And I think that happens a lot in a lot of small businesses. You want to create an environment of, a welcoming family environment, but you have to be careful about that, again, like you said, because at that point, once you have a lack of respect or too close of familiarity, you're going to have a problem, because you won't be able to put structure in place in running your business. So how did you handle that, though? What was the outcome of that situation?
Well, a couple of things happened. I had to continue to confront, even though I was uncomfortable in all of those moments. It had to be done. And I had to get to the point where either you're going to allow this situation and or this person to take your company down that you built for, that you've cried for, or you're going to step up to the plate and you're going to do what you have to do. And so over time, I did what I had to do. However, I still feel like it was too late, because we lost clients and things that should have been handled. I still feel like I handled it too late, but eventually I did.
So do you think it was intentional?
I don't know. And the only reason why I say that with this particular situation, I feel like this person had a really good heart, but I couldn't understand why mistakes continued to be made. And I trained and I trained and I trained, and we're making these same mistakes. And it's falling on me. And I had to apologize to our clients more than ever being in business. So after a while, to this day, I think about that. Did it eventually get to the point where it was intentional because I changed the entire environment? I am not your friend. If you want to maintain this job, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I felt that change when they realized that, oh, she's serious. She means business. So I don't know if it was intentional. I honestly don't. A part of me feel like it was, but a part of me is just like, would someone really do that?
They will.
Yeah.
But the question is, how many times? So, how many clients do you think in totality you lost? Three clients. And how large of a client base was this?
The majority of our clients are 7-figure entrepreneurs. The majority of them, over a year's time, could invest in our services anywhere between 40 and 60,000 over a year.
Okay, and so are we sure that they left specifically because of this one particular person?
Absolutely. They told me, we love you, we like working with you. However, this is not right. That is not right. This is not where it should be. Yes. Yes.
Okay, and so also, was this person in the right role?
No.
Okay, so is that something else that you could have looked at too, whether or not the person was also in the right role, and whether or not they had the right skill set for that?
Right, and I eventually tried to change that when I realized that, like, this is not the role for this individual. They would be better suited in this role. But unfortunately, by that time, they didn't want to get in another role. They felt like they could handle that role. But we are talking about overpaying someone's $15,000 bill, and now I have to have that conversation. Or misinvoicing something or updating something, and now this person is in jeopardy of buying a building for their company. Like, these were big mistakes. So when I realized that, instead of initially letting the person go, even though all of my advisors were saying you need to cut ties, I still wanted to try to place that person in a different position. They didn't want that position, and so eventually I just had to let them go.
So how was that for you? For a person who does not like confrontation, how did you handle saying goodbye?
It was the hardest thing ever. Oh, it was so hard. Full transparency, I started with a lie. Oh, business is slow. And even though we lost clients, that wasn't the case. But then that kind of ate at me because I try to operate in integrity in everything I do. I'm an accountant. And so I just had to have that conversation that, I like you, you're a good person, but this just doesn't work. This is not good.
They should have seen it coming, though.
They did.
If they saw that you were losing those accounts, and did you have that feedback moment with them when you told them, hey, they left because of this mistake and that? So they knew. So they were just riding it out to see how long it was going to take for you to see. Right. Okay, so what was the aftermath with that, though? How long was it for you to kind of fix what was, because I'm sure a lot of times what I've found in my years is then when you start pulling back the layers and investigating and seeing what you have left, you realize that you had a bigger mess that you weren't even aware of, that you have to go in there, and that can create a fear of replacement, because you could easily say, I don't want a buffer. I want to be able to have visibility to what's happening, but as a CEO, you can't do all things. So how did you handle that?
So for a while, I did everything myself. I had the mindset of, if I want it right, I have to do it myself. Now, again, that is wrong as a CEO, but I felt like I entrusted this person so much, and the mistakes were so huge that I'll just do it myself. Then I started to develop processes and procedures, and I have things in place right now where I still have the ultimate visibility. I'm on top of it. When I bring people on the team right now, I am your boss. I am not your friend. I don't want to be your friend. I want to respect you. I want you to respect me. I want to care about you, but I don't want to be your friend.
That's right.
Like, I start the relationship like that.
And I think also with you being a CFO, you're probably very keen to scalability when it's time
Right.
to grow and when it's not. One of the things I tell people is important as a CEO is to know when to hire, when to let go, when to allow natural attrition to take place, and when to morph your business. You, as a CEO, if you're not keen in those spaces,
Right.
you're going to fall flat because if your eyes are not on the numbers, the dollars, what's incoming, what's going out, the trends, knowing how the economy is currently operating
Right.
to determine if I lose a spot here, do I need to replace that?
Right.
Or is there something else that I can do in lieu of in order to not have to lay off or to not have to do other things? I think that's important. You, as a CEO, you have to also be extremely strategic
Yes.
about how you manage. And so that when you say human resources, it is extremely important to be strong in that space. Okay, so now the scalability piece, knowing when to grow, when not. When did you know it was time to move into your own office space?
I've always wanted my own office space. I was virtual long before COVID happened, and I've always maintained a certain financial health for the business. And when I knew that whether we signed a new client for at least a year, I could cover it. In addition to still being able to pay myself, in addition to maintaining my team, I knew that it was time to find an office, or at least I can find an office.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because every business doesn't need an office.
Right.
So why did your company need an office?
We didn't. I wanted an office.
So that's the difference too, is also understanding the difference between need and want.
Right.
I often share with people, I operated for the first 5 years remotely from my home before I moved into my first office space for this particular business, because I've had multiple businesses before, but this particular business, and then we moved here several years later. I needed to move into an office at that space because the type of clients that I had elevated to close were networks, corporations, things of that nature. And I couldn't continue to meet them at a Starbucks or meet you around the corner, because then at that point, those type of companies would not be comfortable with that, right? But doing CFO work, you don't necessarily have to. You can go to your client.
Right. And we do.
And then everything. So that's the part that I will say for most business owners is to ascertain, do you really need an office space or do you want an office space?
Right.
Because along with office space comes the rent, the utilities, all of the supplies that it requires to run the office,
Right.
all of the furniture that it takes, all the maintenance, all the insurance costs. It's just a really large expense
Yes.
to run an office. It's not just the rent. And most people think, oh, I can cover the rent.
Right.
But what about everything else that goes with running an office?
Right.
Okay. So you made the decision because you wanted an office space. How long did you stay in that space?
For a year and a half. We were on the cuffs of 2 years, I believe.
When did you decide this isn't for me?
So the circumstances decided for me in that particular space. I still want my own building at some point, and I will have it. However, I moved into an area that I didn't realize had other businesses that conflicted with my type of company. And so when we secured the office, because we had the office, I started to invite people to the office. And we would have, again, we work with a lot of clients that are 7-figure, 8-figure, some in the entertainment space. So they would come to the office. However, there was a abortion clinic next door that I didn't know about. And after a while, the protesters started coming every single day. And so we would have meetings and our clients would pull up and the protesters running up to them because they're women, making sure they're not going in the abortion clinic. And that was a horrible look. And after a while, I was like, I can't do this.
So was the abortion clinic there before or after you?
It was there before, but when we moved in, they did not disclose that information that the abortion clinic.
So from a learning experience from that, what would you advise someone if they're looking to get an office space? And most people tend to just ask questions, especially if they're like a hairstylist. They'll say, do we have another hair salon in the same building or another? What would you recommend somebody to ask before they sign a lease?
Not only ask about your particular unit or your building, but you want to know about the companies surrounding your building. You want to pull a criminal report for that area. You want to drive over there at night. You want to drive over there early in the morning. You really need to do your research for the surrounding companies or whatever is in your immediate environment. You need to make sure that you are clear on it and how it will impact your company.
You need to ask questions,
Absolutely.
a lot of questions. I think one of the things that I experienced when I got my first office space, I closed the lease, and that was fine. And then, like a month or two later, they closed the lease with one of the top club owners in the country. Well, let me say in the city. He's a dear friend of mine and ended up becoming a client of mine. But what would happen is the weekends, it was a club. So you would come in on Monday, you may see trash from the club, or after a certain time of day, the parking lot became full. Or if you had something going on the weekends for your clients, they didn't have access to the parking space.
Yes.
Or when you're pulling up to come to the office on the weekend, they're expecting you to pay to park. So it was definitely something I would not have opted to move into a place that had a nightclub located there. And I was not happy about that. But once you sign that lease, one thing people have to realize, once you sign that lease, and unless you have extenuating circumstances, and I remember it was even times where the trash wouldn't be probably thrown out in enough time. So the stench, you can smell it going down. And you were like, what is that smell? What is this? What is that? So you really, as a small business owner, I know your arms are kind of clamped too about their very first office space, but knowing what else is in that area and if it aligns to your business, you have to ask a little bit more questions before moving into that. So I think that was a learning lesson for me too. So when I decided the next time to move and what I was going to do when I moved, I was a lot more wiser about what I wanted, where I wanted. But at that point too, you were also financially more fiscal. You can make more decisions at that point. And you can prepare a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that happened to me. I remember the grand opening, and I was so afraid because I knew we were expecting, I don't know, upwards of 50 people. But I was so afraid that the protesters were going to be there. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And we ended up having it. And thankfully, it was just one protester that particular day. But we've had other events where it was horrible. And same thing, sometimes we would have to fight over parking. And down below us, it was a security company, which wasn't a problem. But the problem was when you walk into the building, I wanted to look luxury. So when we first moved there, I'm mopping and sweeping and have flowers up and, the gold rug leading into our space. But then it's trash everywhere and it's cigarette butts and people sitting on the steps and you're having to come out and say, don't sit on the steps. And it was a lot.
It's a lot. Running the business, being a small business owner, it's a lot. It's a lot. So what's next for you, Octavia?
What is next for me? Well, I think maybe in about a year or two, I'll purchase my very own building instead of signing a lease to another space. And honestly, I am focused on expanding. Like, I want the Say Yes to Profits brand and Octavia Conner to one day be a household name.
That's right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out today. I really enjoyed this interview. I think if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, you need to listen to this episode, if not any others, because a lot of the mistakes that you and I shared are pretty prevalent for first-time business owners, or even multiple business owners. As I shared with you before, this isn't my first time at the rodeo. I've owned multiple businesses in the past, and have had other office spaces and so forth. But it's different. It's different each time. Depending on what industry you're in, and I think the transparency that you shared today is invaluable. So thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Coinology. Can't keep a little model hands off me. Both in the club, high singing on P. And I wish I never met her at all. It gets better, ordered another round. It's about to go down. Got 6 model chicks, 6 bottles of Chris. 4 velvet ass, got weed everywhere. What do you say? Me, you and your Chloe glasses. Go somewhere private where we can discuss.
You think my hair got longer for real?
Welcome to Coinology, the podcast.